Thank you, Sydney. And Carol, if you wouldn't mind monitoring the waiting room and admitting people as they come in.
I'll sure do that.
Okay, so our webinar today is about using comparisons on StatsAmerica. And so as usual, if you're familiar with our webinars, we follow a pretty similar structure for each one. We're going to start with the demo. I will walk through some of the tools that we have on StatsAmerica that have comparison features and offer some use cases for those tools. And then we'll and during the demo, if at any time you have a question or some feedback, you can use the chat box to ask whatever you need and give feedback as you wish. And we'll cover those. Either Carol will answer your question in the chat, or we'll cover them during the feedback session, which will be led by Jen.
Hey, Riley, just a quick housekeeping thing, but for whatever reason on my Zoom, I think you have me as a co-host, but I'm not seeing the admit people. Are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing them. If you
Yeah,
might have
it's not showing up on mine.
not showing up for you. Okay.
So I just wanted to let you know. Can you set me up as the co-host? I think that's part of the problem. There we go. Okay, now I should be able to do it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thanks, Carol. We want to make sure that people can join us. So
absolutely.
So let's get started. So many of our tools on StatsAmerica have comparison features. And many of these tools that we're going to walk through today, we've actually had full webinars on them. So if you want to learn more about them, I'll show you the site, StatsAmerica, and the section where you can get to our webinar recordings if you'd like to view those. So our comparison features range from ranks. So you can do statewide and nationwide ranks in some of these tools. The counties and profile is a really strong tool for that. You can rank counties and measures nationwide and within your state. Next, we have some side-by-side comparisons. So you can compare between the same geography types by using the Innovation Index tool or the counties and profile. But you can also compare between different geographies using the Anywhere USA tool. So this is a really neat tool if you wanted to compare, say, an economic development district to maybe its constituent counties to get a kind of a quick side-by-side comparison of those two different geographies. We also have a radius type of comparison on our big radius tool. On this tool, you can select a center point and compare counties ranging from outside that center point from a radius from 25 to 500 miles. And then if you are an EDD, and you can use the SEDS resource library to actually kind of narrow in on certain measures and find direct peers based on those certain performance measures. So per capita income, population, things like that. So we'll walk through some of these features during the demo today. So before you get started with a comparison, you're going to have a few questions that I think you'll want to ask yourself. So one is, who do I think my community's peers are? You probably kind of already have a list in your head of places that you often compare yourself to. You may look to places that are close to you. They may even be part of your EDD or some kind of regional council. And you might consider these not necessarily competitors, but collaborators. Or you might also look to places that are similarly sized or share the same or similar natural amenities. This list can be a really good starting point as you build up a set of peers. Though you might find that as you look a little bit closer at the data, some of the places that you thought were peers turn out to not always be the best comparisons. But that's what this whole process is about, really. You want to think about what specifically do you want to improve about your community. This is driven by your priorities. So these should probably be established as part of a community planning process, like the comprehensive economic development strategy or the SEDS if you're an EDD, or other kinds of economic development, community development plans. And your priorities also shape the kind of performance measures that you're going to be interested in. If one of your priorities is population growth, say your region might have has been staying a little stagnant or maybe even losing population, you might want to prioritize population growth. So this population growth rate is going to be a performance measure that you want to look at. You also want to think about what communities do I aspire to be like. So your comparison group should include peers that are similar to yours, that are similar to your community, but you should also include those places that are aspirational, places that you want your community to be like. And then you also might you might have a list of these at the outset, but through this analysis, through this data work, you might discover some aspirational places that you want to compare yourself to. And then finally, you want to think about what can your community realistically achieve. So, like I said previously, you want to aspire to be the best community you can possibly be, but you also need to be realistic. Not every place has the capacity, the workforce, or the infrastructure to be Silicon Valley, to be the Research Triangle. So you need to choose aspirational places based on what your community can achieve realistically. So one objective of this demo is to provide you with a couple workflows that describe kind of the steps that you should take when starting out with a comparison project on StatsAmerica. So with this first one, we're going to talk about how to identify peers based on performance measures and compare. So as I mentioned before, ranks are a good place to start. And we have these available for any geography, virtually any geography you can imagine, actually, if you use the Anywhere USA tool. You use ranks to identify peers for your chosen performance measure. Or if you're an EDD, you can use the SEDS resource library to directly identify peer EDDs for your chosen measure. The really cool part about this is you can select from a list of measures on the SEDS resource library tool, and then it will immediately list EDDs that are similar to yours along those measures. And we'll talk about that when we get to the tool. And then from here, you want to move on to a side-by-side comparison to see how your geography stacks up to peers across various dimensions. And what dimension you want to look at kind of informs what tool you want to go to. If you want to look at innovation, the innovation index would obviously be a good place to go. If you want to look at more demographic factors, basic economic demographics, then maybe the counties in profile or Anywhere USA tool is good for you. And then finally, you can download the data. If you want to get into Excel and do some more analysis on it, or you can even download in PDF or Word if you just want to make a presentation. So we're going to start here with the counties and profile tool. So I've actually started on our homepage just so I can kind of guide you how to get there. So all of our profiles are here click on Explore Profiles, and you can come right down to them. Counties and profile is right here. So the best way to start is by typing a county. I'm going to look at St. Joseph County, Indiana. The city of South Bend is located in St. Joseph. So say that one thing that St. Joseph might be interested in is population growth. You can see here that growth since the 2010 census is relatively low. They haven't been losing population, but if you look at the rank in the United States, it's pretty back there. It's pretty far back there. It's out of 3,000 counties, it's definitely in the top half, but it still could be better. Now, one thing that you could do, what I mentioned before, is you can show ranks by state. So what you would do there is just toggle this checkbox, and then you can see the rank in the state. So out of 92 counties in Indiana, you see that St. Joseph County is the 28th. So if you want to look at those peers that are closest to St. Joseph, say along this performance measure. You can click on the link here, and it'll take you to a list of all the counties in Indiana ranked by population growth. And the county we selected is highlighted here. So you can start kind of building up a set of peers by looking at these counties that are nearest in terms of population growth. So I think Switzerland, Whitley, Du Bois might be good to look at. But I also said that you should be aspirational. So we can also maybe scroll up here and see some of the highest performing counties across this measure in the state. People from Indiana wouldn't be surprised to see that the top performers in population growth are Hamilton, Boone, and Hendricks counties. So maybe we can choose those counties as part of our aspirational peer set. So let's return back to counties in profile. So if we want to do a side-by-side comparison, we can click on this comparison feature. And unfortunately, at this point, it doesn't carry over, but this is some functionality that we're working through and might end up changing. So things carry over from different pages. But so let's kind of take some of our peers and see how they compare across all the measures that are in the counties and profiles. So we looked at some of our closest peers like Switzerland. Let's bring in Whitley County here. And now let's look at some aspirational counties. So Hamilton County. And so if you want to compare some of these counties across these data items, it's pretty easy to do. If you want to look at it, just a kind of a baseline summary, you can stay on the page and see the performance measure that we were kind of focused on here, population growth. You can see that these are all pretty similar. The one thing you might notice is that these two closest peer counties are actually pretty small. So though they may be a comparable in terms of population growth, in terms of total population, they might not be. So which we should also turn to Hamilton County. You see that it's had an incredible population growth since 2010, much more than St. Joseph, but their total populations are a little bit more aligned. Now, if we're still interested in population, you can scroll down a little further and you can see historically how population has changed. You see that St. Joseph has been really stagnant compared to even the closest peers. So from 2000 to 2010, it was much lower even than 2010 and 2019 compared to the other ones. So it's certainly what I'm kind of discovering here is that it's kind of a long-term trend when it comes to population growth in St. Joseph County. So that's certainly something that whenever you're making these comparisons, you're going to want to think about some actions you can take that might help that.
Well, and Riley, if I might just add a note to this, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see go back up to the net migration, because if people are also wondering, well, what's happening to St. Joseph or what isn't happening to St. Joseph that's happening to Hamilton? And I think you can see pretty quickly that St. Joe they're losing people to other counties or other states. And Hamilton County brought in, just in a single year, brought in almost 5,000 people. So clearly there's something attracting people to Hamilton County. And I think as you look through those migration figures and births and deaths, St. Joe County is very similar to Hamilton County, but they have a much higher death rate. And those deaths are counted based on where the person lived, not the hospital.
Mm.
So I just wanted to clarify that. It doesn't mean it's counting the number of people that are dying in St. Joseph hospitals. It's people who actually live there. So it's something for them to pay attention to. Part of the answer there is the numbers of people that are 65 and older are larger in St. Joe County. So there's really a lot of information here in the comparison that you can look at to answer some of those basic why questions.
Yeah, that's a great point, Carol. And it should be said that St. Joseph County is also where the University of Notre Dame is. So it's interesting. You can kind of see that's reflected in the median age. It's a little bit lower than these others, but kind of the flip side is that older, the 65 plus, and then the 45 to 64 range is pretty high compared to Hamilton. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to discover, even just looking in with regard to population that you can kind of tease out here using these comparisons. So I mentioned that we had another tool called the Anywhere USA profile, where you can compare different geographies to each other. So let's go ahead and navigate to that. So sticking with our example, we can compare St. Joseph to, let's say it's EDD that it's in, which is the Michiana Area Council of Governments. Maybe you want to compare it to the city of South Bend. But the city of South Bend doesn't necessarily include maybe all the people that live in the school district. So that's another geography that we have available in the Anywhere tool. So maybe we can look at the school corporation. So the real advantage of this is that you really won't find many. I don't think any other tools on StatsAmerica actually allow you to compare different kinds of geographies to each other. Now, the Anywhere USA tool, this data come from the American Community Survey at the Census Bureau, because that's really one of the only sources, federal sources at least, that have a lot of data at sub-county levels. So we are limited by what the ACS gives us, but the strength of this tool is that you can compare different geographies to each other. So one more side-by-side comparison tool that we can briefly look at. Maybe you are interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. So we can go to the Innovation Index tool. And let's say we want to compare St. Joseph County to our peer set. So we had Hamilton County in there. Pull up Du Bois. And one more. So you scroll down, you can kind of get an idea of, in terms of innovation, maybe some of the advantages that Hamilton County has in comparison to the counties that are more similar to St. Joseph and St. Joseph itself. So we have a full webinar on the Innovation Index that, if you want to learn more, I would highly encourage you to listen to the recording. But briefly, you can interpret the Innovation Index where a value under 100 is doing less well in terms of innovation than the US, and a value over 100 is doing better comparatively to the US. And to learn more about any of these measures, you can just click the information button here. But I really just wanted to show you this so you can just kind of see another dimension of comparisons here. we have kind of the baseline economic demographic information, but we also have a tool like the Innovation Index that gives you some more insight into innovation capacity. So let's return to the slideshow, and then I'm going to talk about how we can use the SEDS resource library peer finding function to identify peer EDDs. So I actually I linked to the peer finder, but if you navigate to the SEDS resource library, you'll see this page. And again, I think in December, we had a webinar on the SEDS resource library. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check that out. But if you want to use the peer finding function, you scroll down here to find peers. So we can start with an economic development district, and we can search for peers based on these 5 performance measures here. So maybe another priority of this EDD is increasing per capita income. We can look at finding peers based on per capita personal income growth, and then you can select how many peers you want. We can just stick with just the closest peers for now. So right away, you can see which EDDs across the country are similar to the Michiana Area Council of Governments based on per capita personal income growth. And if you'd like to learn more about these EDDs, you can click their link here, and it'll take you to their SEDS. Actually, that's the main function of the SEDS resource library. It's kind of a repository of SEDS from all EDDs across the country. So another thing we can do with EDDs is the side-by-side comparisons. So if I have this idea of some peers in my mind, I think I'll stick with Merrimack, Mid-Willamette. You can go back to the Anywhere USA profile and look at how these peers compare to each other. Just like that. So you can kind of get a sense of maybe some shared challenges that you might have with another EDD, or some shared opportunities, which can kind of give you a little bit of inspiration of how you could improve your own community. So our second workflow has to do with using the Big Radius tool to identify peers based on proximity. So the main function here is you can identify peers within a certain radius, ranging from 25 to 500 miles. You can download data right from the BRT to see disaggregated data for each county in the radius. So this will give you a little bit more than what you will see on the screen. You can download some data about their workforce, about their industries, employment, and payroll. There's a lot of data that is available for download directly from the Big Radius tool. Or you could return to one of these other tools and do a side-by-side comparison, a direct side-by-side comparison of all the counties that are in that radius. So let's go to the tool. So you can select a center location either by a city or a county, but it will default to the center point of the county, basically. So we can either do South Bend or St. Joseph. It'll give us the same results. And let's say we want to expand the radius size to 100 miles. You can scroll down and you can see first an aggregated report. You can see all the counties that are in this 100-mile radius and see that the population is about 12 million. And then you can see the growth of the entire region. So that's about 1.1%. You can see a list of the largest counties by population and the counties with the greatest growth. Some aggregated data about the labor force and employment and industries as of the most recent period we had, which is Q3 of 2020. And then as I mentioned before, you can look at some disaggregated data. And to do this, you would just download the county level detailed data. And that would give you an Excel sheet that has all of these counties listed individually. With some of these data points below, instead of being aggregated, they're actually for each individual county. So you can kind of do some of your own comparisons in Excel, your own kind of analysis. And so finally, we'll return to this overview of the comparison features, just so you can kind of get an idea of all the things that we have available